name is Adrian Navarre, the CEO and founder of TickerTrends. Today, I just wanted to give a brief introduction on our KPI predictions product and what we're doing at TickerTrends in order to provide KPI forecasts and tracking for a variety of metrics across US and some international equities. This product at the time of making this video has been launched within the past month or so, and within the month, we've expanded coverage from just a handful of metrics to now over 50 to 60 metrics, which by the end of June will be at over 100 metrics tracked within the TickerTrends platform. Our methodology for forecasting these metrics and tracking these metrics is that we use a model which is capturing consumer intent signals before the point of purchase. So a big differentiator that we tend to market and put ourselves as is that we're focusing on pre-point of purchase data in order to provide differentiated or even advanced signals to some of our competitors in KPI forecasting. So with us, you'll find signals that can either anticipate certain point of purchase providers or determine unique information that other point of purchase providers might not be picking up on. We analyze real-time search behavior, product discovery patterns, content engagement across the web, and we use this at scale through an aggregation of many different data sources, which you can learn more about on our website, TickerTrends.io, in order to identify demand trends well ahead of traditional point of purchase data sources. Most data providers currently that we compete with rely on lagging indicators like credit card transaction or certain panel data of purchases. In contrast, we use our pre-purchase intent data in order to generate and derive our forecasts and tracking of these different metrics. So we find that this is helpful both in inter-quarter trading and looking at some of the revisions that we have for the metrics that we track, as well as the final predictions and anticipating certain beats or misses in the market with varying degrees of accuracy depending on the metric that we're doing tracking for. And you can find more information on the entire list of coverage and metrics that we track by emailing us admin@tickertrends.io. Now I'll talk a little bit about the format with which we provide this information and data. The first format I will describe is our research format. Similar to Yipit or mScience or some of these other third-party data providers, we have started to release our newsletter format of data tracking, which can be quite interesting to certain discretionary analysts if they are looking for signals which could potentially move the market, again, inter-quarter, or on certain data releases or revision releases of what we're focusing on within our articles. What we try to focus on is data that is differentiated or picks up on interesting signals that the market may not be focusing on. And through this, we aim to provide market-moving signals with our article data releases. And this is all included in our package of KPI predictions. So we provide both the software tracking and tools, which I'll show the interface of in just a second, as well as our research releases, which is released and distributed to a wide range of analysts and firms which may be interested or tracking the specific business that we're doing forecasts for. In particular, two recent research reports that we've put out, which I thought were most interesting, was one, our Celsius Q2 outlook, where we forecasted Alani Nu revenue for both Q1 and Q2 of 2025, both of which are currently unreported quarters of revenue for the Alani Nu business, which is quite significant to the recent upgrades that Celsius has received from other analysts and other firms, where many of them have not fully modeled the potential revenue impact of Alani Nu on Celsius within these two quarters. And another metric that we've recently put out in our research is our LifeMD KPI forecast for telehealth revenue, which also deviated quite significantly from the street. And just in the past couple of days, not only has LifeMD received a couple upgrades, but also the price has moved up an additional over 20% since the release of this specific KPI forecast. So again, because of the data that we're tracking, we can provide forecasts on metrics that to other data providers might be exceedingly uncertain or low coverage. And we can provide tracking and ideas and metrics for these businesses, which other data providers might overlook or have low coverage of or very slow revisions for. And so our data can be quite impactful in terms of providing you an additional source of information when looking at some of these businesses, for example, like Celsius, LifeMD, Duolingo, and many more, which we cover on our KPI tracking platform. Within the actual software platform, how our KPI predictions are presented is we structure the platform into two sections, one of which I will describe we're leaning into a bit more than the other. First of all, you can view the raw predictions and metrics in our table format, where you can see things like the actual predicted value and how that value is doing relative to past performance of that specific metric. So different acceleration metrics, the year-over-year growth, quarter-over-quarter growth. And then the other metric, which we've been focusing on more as well, like I mentioned, is our revision increases. So this is the inter-quarter, within the fiscal quarter, how our tracking for that metric is changing within the fiscal quarter for these different metrics. And of course, the signals that we want to provide to our user base and analysts that subscribe to our software and services are the significant revisions, significant interquarter revisions, which might be interesting to the price action of that business within the quarter. So another feature we've recently added is our event timeline, which is essentially a timeline of recent revisions that we've done across the metrics which we're tracking. And this is a slightly newer feature in terms of how we're displaying the revisions. And so what this will look like over time more and more is we will be providing the most impactful revision metrics on a daily or weekly basis based on depending on how often we're updating the data for that specific metric. And then this will provide analysts a very easy to use view of providing what metrics have the largest revisions and how that might impact business performance. And then of course that might also be included in our research, which we will then distribute to a larger analyst base and more market participants. So our entire goal with our KPI tracking is to provide coverage of these unique metrics based on our unique data methodology, and then of course distribute that information and data to eventually have a certain level of market impact, assuming we can prove our accuracy over time, which we strongly believe we will be able to. In terms of the view of these predictions and revisions, in addition to this event-based feed, we can also look at the individual predictions themselves. For example, if I look at Lemonade tracking for some of the metrics that we have forecasts and tracking for, I can see the in-force premium metric with the predictions and actuals over time. I can see the past predictions and the current prediction for the next quarter. And I can also view the revisions for that current quarter tracking that we've had on our platform. And so essentially when we're announcing and releasing these revisions, this would have been the same revisions that we display on the platform for past quarters in terms of how the performance tracked interquarter for that specific forecast in the past. And typically we find the directionality of these revisions to be quite interesting relative to market performance. And depending on the metric, this can be updated anywhere from weekly, potentially to more often, depending on how often we're updating our data for that specific metric. And different businesses might have one metric that we're doing tracking for, or multiple metrics, whereas in this case, we have the total customers for Lemonade, in addition to the in-force premium metric, which we also have tracking for. And this will vary across the different businesses. We also provide raw data tracking as well. So below our KPI predictions, you can see different metrics like web traffic data, year-over-year growth, Android and iOS data, year-over-year growth, and then other data types which might help provide more contextual information to the KPI predictions. In the future, we will also be doing event-based notifications on some of the raw data sources as well, so that even before they might show up in the forecasts, you will be notified if there is a certain flip in web traffic or search trends or social media trends for a certain business. And we hope to turn that into market impact events as well. That is a general overview of our KPI predictions product, both in terms of the software and research distribution, which we will be doing. If you're interested in any of these products and the changes that we'll be making to these products in the very near future, feel free to reach out to us, admin@TickerTrends.io. Our coverage will also be rapidly increasing. So although at the time of this video, it's about 60 metrics, by the end of this month, it will be 100, and I expect in the following months, it will be far greater than that. And we've had a lot of interest from different funds and analysts in terms of specific metrics that are most important to them. So if you have additional metrics that you'd like to see forecasts and tracking for, chances are we can add it to our platform, and we'd be happy to create a full dashboard for that business and that company's metrics that you'd like to have tracked. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you when you reach out to our email, admin@TickerTrends.io. Thank you.